Oscar's fingers as he was trying to open her airway. I tried to do a jaw lift maneuver to open the airway. It was very difficult with the clenching down. And all during that time, there wasn't any signs of life that I could see. I opened her right eyelid. The pupil was fixed, dilated, and the cornea was milky. In other words, it was already drying out. So to me it was obvious that she was mortally wounded. I looked at the rest of her body and I noted that she had a wound in the right thigh, also a wound in the right upper arm. As I looked further, I saw there was blood and hair and what looked like brain tissue intermingled with that to the right high parietal area of her skull.
And is that what one can see on photograph 133?
Yes, that's right. On the top of the skull, that's where I saw the brain tissue and the blood.
Yes, and then what happened?
Well, during that time, while I was trying to ascertain if she is revivable, Oscar was crying all the time. He prayed to God to please let her live. She must not die. He said at one stage while he was praying that he will dedicate his life and her life to God if she would just only live and not die that night. When I saw that, I couldn't do anything for her because I thought when I arrived there, maybe if you can just hold down a wound or stop bleeding, that could help. But she was way too seriously injured for that. I went outside, and Mr. Stander was outside, and I asked him, is the ambulance on its way? And he said, no, hasn't called the ambulance yet. So I took my phone, and I phoned the Wilgers Hospital emergency department, and I asked them to send an ambulance. And they said, sorry, you have to phone ER 911, one of those ambulance centers, which Mr. Stander then duly did. And I remember...
Just a moment.
Okay.
So Mr. Stander phoned, and then?
Mr. Stander phoned, I think it was Netcare 911 that he phoned. And he handed me the phone. I spoke to the dispatcher, described what happened and the nature of the injuries, and I'm sure proceeded to send out an ambulance.
And were you still there when the ambulance arrived?
I didn't leave. I went back inside the house periodically to check if, how things were going. Her condition obviously didn't change much. Oscar stayed by his side most of the time. I remember at one stage while I was outside, I was talking to Mr. Stander, and I noticed that Oscar was going up the stairs. And I asked Mr. Stander if he knew where the gun was, because it was obvious that Oscar was emotionally very, very upset. And I didn't know the situation in the house. So I thought maybe he was going to hurt himself. And Mr. Stander said he didn't know where the gun was. A few minutes later, Oscar returned down the stairs.
You referred to Oscar now. On
Yes.
that night, did you know who that person was?
I didn't know it was Oscar Pistorius, but Mr. Stander talked about Oscar. But when we were looking for a house in the estate agent pointed us out a house, and she said, Oscar Pistorius lives there, which was a totally different house. So in my mind, I was not in Oscar Pistorius' house.
Okay. You said you saw Mr. Pistorius, the accused go upstairs and then downstairs again. What happened after that?
Well, I was outside. I was talking to Mr. Stander. At one stage, I think his wife arrived. Mr. Stander's daughter was also on the scene at that time. So we were talking. I don't really remember the specifics about what we were talking about. Only that they were concerned about what happened. And I think especially Mr. Stander's wife said that she hopes this doesn't get out to the papers. Then the ambulance arrived a short while after that. I think it was the quick response car was first, and then the ambulance. They rushed by. I said, Mr. Stander, I'm of no use further to anyone. We exchanged numbers, and I got in my car and I drove back home.
And when you got back home?
When I got back home, my wife said, what happened? And I told her what happened, and we didn't discuss it really. I just told her, you know, what I saw, what I did, and yes, we tried to get some rest after that. But at about 4:17 thereabouts, my phone rang, and was Mr. Stander just notifying me that Oscar's lawyer may be calling me due to the incident.
Now, Mr. Stipp, how did it come about that you made a statement to the police?
Well, the next morning, I went to work as usual, and my wife phoned me at about 9 o'clock or so, and she said, you know, the lady that was shot this morning.
Your voice is getting softer and softer again.
My wife phoned at about 9 o'clock that morning, the 14th, and she said, do you know the lady that was shot this morning? It turns out to actually be Oscar Pistorius' girlfriend, and that you were in Oscar Pistorius' house. And I was very surprised because I couldn't believe it. Anyway, I thought because Mr. Stander had my phone number that he would actually tell the police, come to me because I was on the scene, take a statement. Nothing happened. No one came back to me that day. I thought that a bit strange. So the next day, I decided I will just go down to the security gate as we go out, and I spoke to the security estate manager, Mr. St. Ledger Denny, and I asked him, can he give me a number maybe of a police officer that I can just phone, just to tell them, listen, I was at the scene, I may be able to help and give a statement.
Yes, what happened there?
A police officer came to our rooms at the radiology department, the mammography unit where I work. During working hours, at around 12 o'clock, it was Detective Constable Ross, a lady. She was assisted by a colleague, a male, I'm not sure what his name is, and she took down my statement.
After that, did you make any other statements?
Yes, I did. A few months later to Captain...
You've now forgotten name. If you point him, I could perhaps help you.
Right next to your colleague.
It's Captain van Aert, Marie.
Sorry, Captain van Aert, Mike van Aert.
How did that happen? What happened there?
what happened after my
No,
second
no.
statement.
When Captain Van Aert took down your statement, you take us through that.
Well, he arrived at our house. It was in the afternoon. He swore me in before he took the statement, and then I relayed the events as best as I could recollect.
Good. Doctor, the accused has got a version about the events, and I just want to go through one or two things with you. Now, when you heard the first, as you described, bang, 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 what did you think that was?
I thought those were gunshots.
Now, what is your experience with guns?
My experience with guns. I was in the army for 2 years at Voortrekkerhoogte in the military division in SAMS from, let's say, 93, 94. And during that time, I did have weapons training on the R5 assault rifle and the 9mm pistol.
And after that?
After that, no, not at all.
Now, when you got to the balcony and you heard the scream of a woman, you said?
Yes, that's right.
That was, in terms of Evans, moments after the shots were fired.
It was moments after, yes.
And at that time, did you notice if the lights in the bathroom was on or off?
The lights were on.
I didn't get the answer.
The lights were on,
On.
yes.
Now, after the first screams, you went back into your house to make a call.
That's right.
Can you recall having heard further screams?
Not while in the house. What I can say is that initially, when I was outside on the balcony and I heard the woman scream, and I think I also mentioned this to Captain Van Aert, I thought I could hear a bit softer also a man's voice that was also screaming, but I was not sure, and I did not include that in my written statement.
Well, could that have been the same voice? What was your view?
Well, the pitch was lower than the other voice I heard, so it could sound like two different voices.
And you heard a man shout, "Help, help, help."
Yes, that was when I was in the house and I was phoning. As I went out onto the balcony again, I heard the man distinctly shout, "Help, help, help."
When you, in the time that you were at the house, did the police not arrive at the Pistorius house?
And the ambulance arrived. The police did arrive, but I left the scene by that time.
Now, your bedroom window, is that open or closed?
It's not really windows, it's doors.
Doors.
And yes, because it's quite hot, both are open. On my wife's side, and then the big door towards the big balcony is open.
Okay. We'll have to explain to the court. Your wife's side is towards the photograph with the curtains. We saw photograph number. I'll get to it now. (938). If we go to 938 and you say the windows towards your wife's side, is that what we can see there?
Yes. It's actually a door that's open.
And that was open?
Yes.
As well as towards the main balcony where you went?
That's right.
We're looking at
Yes.
the correct photograph.
Yes. Go to 938, please. Yes, my lady. Shall we just explain to court that door over there? That is what you refer to as the door on your wife's side.
That's right. Yes.
And if one looks at the photograph 936, one can see the doors to your wife's side there above the garage.
That's right. Yes. Where the arrow is.
On the right-hand side of that, there's another balcony,
That's correct.
and those doors.
Yes, that is the one I was referring to. That's the one I came in and out of. And that's why the chair is there, to prop open the door. Otherwise, it just swings shut during the night.
Yeah, what? You said you've made the calls and you heard further loud sounds. Am I right?
That's right.
What did that sound?
Well, it was also three sounds, three loud bangs. And I also thought that those must be shots. That's why I told my wife to get away from her side of the balcony on Oscar's fingers as he was trying to open her airway. I tried to do a jaw lift maneuver to open the airway. It was very difficult with the clenching down. And all during that time, there wasn't any signs of life that I could see. I opened her right eyelid. The pupil was fixed, dilated, and the cornea was milky. In other words, he said at one stage while he was praying that he will dedicate his life and her life to God if she would just only live and not die that night. When I saw that, I couldn't do anything for her because I thought when I arrived there, maybe if you can just hold down a wound or stop bleeding, that could help. But she was way too seriously injured for that. I went outside, and Mr. Stander was outside, and I asked him, is the ambulance on its way? And he said, no, hasn't called the ambulance yet. So I took my phone and I phoned the Wilgers Hospital emergency department and I asked them to send an ambulance. And they said, sorry, you have to phone ER 911, one of those ambulance centers, which Mr. Stander then duly did. And I remember...
On photograph 133.
Yes, that's right. On the top of the skull, that's where I saw the brain tissue and the blood.
Yes, and then what happened?
Well, during that time, while I was trying to ascertain if she is revivable, Oscar was crying all the time. He prayed to God to please let her live. She must not die. It was already drying out. So to me it was obvious that she was mortally wounded. I looked at the rest of her body and I noted that she had a wound in the right thigh, also a wound in the right upper arm. As I looked further, I saw there was blood and hair and what looked like brain tissue intermingled with that to the right, right at the area of the skull.
And is that what one can